Friends, good morning to all of you. So once again, welcome all of you to this Students Faculty Seminar for the month of August, as we have scheduled in a new way in between the classes. So hereafter, I think it may not be in the afternoons. So there are certain changes may be there in the future. So it's mentioned that actually the tea will be served just before the seminar. There was some communication gap in between the mess managers and the coordinator. Sorry for that. So they may be, as usual, in between they serve the tea. That is the message I received. So kindly bear with that. And as we begin this seminar, may I request Reverend Daniel Joseph Raj, Professor in the Department of Pastoral Care and Counseling, will come and offer a word of prayer. May I request her to come forward.
Let us pray. Father God, once again we thank you and praise you for all the blessings that we received from you. God, thank you for the life given by you to serve you, Lord. We also thank you for our college, our institution, a great institution, to train the people, which trained the people to address the problems of the society. God, we thank you for this day, the academic fest of the MTSC. As our students and ourselves, we are going to hear from your servant. Open our eyes to see the problems of the society and help us to understand ourselves in the framework of the problems of the society. God, give the presenter good knowledge and wisdom to clarify whatever the student asks, and give good wisdom to the students to understand the paper. It should not be merely a ritual. It should be a time of eye-opening of the people. Be with us throughout the section. We also pray for the moderator. God, give him a knowledge to moderate the section, to lead the people into the time of learning. Be with us and guide us throughout the seminar. In Jesus' most precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir, for the word of prayer. And this is the time to introduce the moderator come respondent, official respondent of this seminar. We are very much fortunate to have Reverend Jerin Reginald, Professor in the Department of New Testament. So it is always a biblical cluster is leading this today, as we are having the Old Testament. Professor will be giving the presentation, where moderating and responding from the New Testament. That is very unique. Reverend Jerin Reginald finishes Master of Theology in the Department of New Testament in 2009, and he is having a 15 years of teaching experience as well as the pastoral ministry along with the MTSC and Evangelical Church of India. Is holding also the additional responsibility in the distance education, external studies, as a director for a couple of years. And we also, he's also pursuing his higher study, the PhD under the Schwartz, Allahabad, and So we wish him all the very best for his research program. And at this moment, on behalf of this student faculty seminar, may invite you to come and chair as a moderator, come official respondent of this student faculty seminar. May and the program schedule is already given. We also have the student respondent, the brother Tamil Vendan from BD final year. We also welcoming him for this seminar. Rest of the time, I will hand it over to the moderator to take over the session. Thank you.
So good morning. So good to see you all here. And I'm very much thankful to God for this opportunity to be the moderator and respondent of this presentation. I thank dear Reverend Dr. K. Vijayan sir, the convener of the Students Faculty Seminar, for choosing me as the moderator of this presentation. I should be thankful for the very nice words he had spoken on me. Now, maybe good words of appreciation, of course, for the way he welcomed me. Thank you so much. And now, I'd like to welcome the presenter. The presenter is not at all new to us. I should say that the presenter, Reverend Mrs. Shanti Gopu ma'am, is an interesting personality. You might have had a lot of experiences with her in many aspects. So she has contributed a lot to our seminary. And I think we have gained a lot through her wisdom. Not only you, even we have the external students. So many have gained a lot through the wisdom of our dear ma'am. So I really appreciate and thank God for her wisdom. In order to introduce her, I should say that she is an alumni of our seminary, as many of you have known about her. She has done her BTH during the years 95 to 99 in our seminary. 95 to 99. I don't know how many of you were born during that time. Many of you may be 2K, right? So she has done her BTH during 95 to 99. BD in Gurukul Lutheran Theological College during 2006 to 2008. MTH in the field of Old Testament during 2019 to 2021. And now she has been a blessing for us in the department of the Old Testament. And we are so happy that she is going to be a blessing, especially on this day through her presentation. Now may I invite her to take her chair over here. Shall we all welcome her with an applause? So today the topic of the presentation is the status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period. The status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period. So when I listen to the phrase status of women, see, maybe I should say that down the decades we are listening to this, and we have been listening to a lot of presentations on status of women. And when we think about the present age, I should convey my own perception that whenever I happen to listen to or read the phrase status of women, I perceive that there is no space left for women in the world in the present age. Is it not? Do you all agree? When you agree, the presentation is over. You people are agree or not? You people agree or not? Especially the women folk. The girls, you don't understand what I said? Or you don't want to respond? So I perceive that there is no space left in the world for women, right? We talk about equal rights, and I think it has been an outdated one. And you have, especially the women, are given space in all the arenas in the world, that no space is left behind. But on the other hand, we need to accept that there are certain individuals, there are certain ruthless power mongers, and there are certain communities, or there are certain regions where you find, or where you would feel the stigma remains, that they think that women should be submissive. They cannot be given equal rights. They cannot be on a good position. And I have felt, or I have experienced, that certain women of certain places or regions, sometimes in a church, even in certain families, women themselves consider as inferior. They themselves do not want to come to the front in certain places. Have you seen that? So a lot of emancipation has been done, and we talk about equality, and we try to talk about the betterment of women. Not only we are talking, we are exercising it, and we find women could occupy all the space we find in this world. Not only in this world, I should say universe, right? Till now you have a woman in space, right? Of course, I believe that she is in a safer place, right? In all the space in the entire universe. But the stigma remains. And even women themselves consider as inferior, and they themselves do not want to come to the front. So I think this presentation is a need of the hour, and we expect a lot from the presenter through this presentation with in biblical perspective. And we need to understand that during the post-exilic times, women were not given enough space, and that has been very much dealt with by the presenter by looking into the minute details of post-exilic age. And it would be very much evident through her presentation, and I don't want to take any more time on that. So now I'd like to invite our presenter to present, and through that she'll be a blessing for each and every one of us this morning. Shall we all invite her with an applause? And after her presentation, we will listen to student respondent.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you here sitting. I thank God for this great opportunity that I have given. And also I thank our Sir Vijayan, who has given me this privilege to present my paper. And also I thank our moderator, who has moderator and his way, the way he introduced me. Thank you, sir. He has observed a lot, I think. And also he has started a good opening for my paper. So the way he expressed the status, and I think that it is the right opening for my paper. So thank you, sir, for that. And now I would like to go into the paper. This paper, as sir has said, the status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period. So this will be a paper regarding the women during the post-exilic. And as you know that the Bible is always male-oriented. The scribes who have entered who have done the work are male, and so we can see throughout the domination of the male and the patriarchal society is the dominating one in the Bible. And regarding this paper, why I want to present is I want to bring some of the women who are not being visible, even if you read the text. So I wanted to do this, and even I selected this topic last year, but I was not able to present the paper. But I thank God for I have got a chance to present this in the beginning of the year. So let us go into the paper, and I would like to read some of the places, and I would like to skip some of the areas because considering the time, and I would also, if you have any needed clarification, skipped area, you can also refer that. So let me start with the paper. This paper is an attempt to reread the description of the lives of women in the Old Testament. The Hebrew Bible is a male chauvinist document written by male scribes who has declined and effaced the stories of women not only in the ancient period but also in the post-exilic period. They are shadowed in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. According to Cady Staton, a Bible feminist, emphasizes that Bible was written by men and was the expression of a patriarchal culture. She was convinced that patriarchy was the foundation of Christianity as it had evolved over time. To find the reality that has been hidden behind the text, it would be better to apply biblical criticism to the biblical portion of women. Therefore, the tools of higher criticism and historical critical approach will be applied to the selected incidents from Ezra and Nehemiah, and the purpose is to bring biblical women of the post-exilic era out from the shadows and to expose once again the dominant role of male scribes who have been unjust to the women and declined their status. So this is about the declined status of the post-exilic women by the scribes of that period. The position of women in Israel. So there are a lot of researches done, and from that we have generally accepted that the ancient Near Eastern cultures, the cultures around the Israel, is always, was a male dominated. So to find the position of women, let us analyze textual data from Israel and ancient Near East. By including data from the surrounding cultures of ancient Near East and Israel, it will become clear whether it is a custom or is a part of the common culture continuum of the ancient Near East. The main sources used for analyzing the social position of women are biblical and non-biblical literary texts that render all information on the positions of women. So to understand the position of women in the Old Testament, we have to see the extra biblical evidences, and also the biblical evidences that we have in our hand. So furthermore, in the view on women and their position as expressed in the literary text mainly reveals information on women in the highest strata of society. For too often, it has been taken for granted that data derived from literary sources apply to all social strata. A bias on the part of scribes working for the social strata, employing them, is by no means excluded. Unfortunately, we have few sources on the position of women in lower strata of society. Those that we have generally are of a non-literary nature. So in the Old Testament, the women we read, some of the names in the Old Testament that has been written are from the high social positions, and we don't find the lower positions of the women in the Bible. So we have to see from the non-literary sources and find what was the culture and what was their status, the women's status, from the other non-literary nature. That means we have to go into the other literary sources. So here literary sources express the world view of people. They inform us on the views humans entertain of the organization of society. Cultural messages on the relation between the sexes are also hidden in literary texts. Myths So myth plays a great role in all the religions, especially in the Bible. We have a lot of myths that is connected with the literary and with the Bible or with the patriarchal society. So myths, for instance, render information on the position of goddesses in relation to gods. The world of the deities is in many respects a magnified reflection of the human world. The polytheistic family of gods, for instance, reveals traits of the family structure of the human families, especially the royal family. While the king is head of the nation, the main deity is the head of the pantheon. Both are male characters, assisted by their female spouse. In fact, in this respect, myths can be compared to biblical history, since both narrative events from an androcentric point of view, while the scope is mainly on those in power. However, the relation between the position of goddesses in a pantheon and that of women in the society is not a straightforward one. So here, the main goddesses and God are being compared with the human, and it is connected with the human. It is according to the deities, what position they have, and same, if it is a male deity, they give the position of the head position and the female as the assistants. Same way it is reflected in the family of the people in the Mesopotamian area. So Gray Beck has stressed that the position of female deities within a religious system is hardly a direct reflection of the power or influence enjoyed by human families within the society. Thus, it would be simplistic to assume that in a society where goddess had an important position, this reflected an actual position of women in that society. One needs to ask which goddesses had such a position of importance and what kind of function they had. On the other hand, scholars do assume some relationship existed. So Tikva Femer-Kensky, for instance, had noted the role of goddesses in the Mesopotamian pantheon had became marginalized in the course of the 3rd and 2nd millennium BCE. In this regard, she points to correlation between the divine world and the ancient Sumerian state, both in the divine and the human world. Power became a male monopoly. Females, both divine and human, were supposed to exercise power, but to perform roles related to sexuality and reproduction. So by the 2nd millennium and the 3rd millennium, it has been found that, it has been researched that the female or the deities were given a low positions, and so that reflected in the Mesopotamian area. So we see that the status of women also got declined during those days. That was the period of the Abraham and all the forefathers. So therefore the women in Israel was considered less in power, and they were not given much importance in the social, religious, economic status, and men became powerful. Further, we also witness in the post-exilic period the women in declined status. These women have been shadowed in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. To understand the declined status of the women, it will be better to understand the summary of the post-exilic book Ezra and Nehemiah. The Ezra and Nehemiah in the Old Testament, it is considered as one book, so that's why it has been written a book, not books. And you have to know that both the books are clubbed together, and it is called as one book in the Old OT or Hebrew Bible. So the summary of the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, we see there are 3 things done in this period. When the returnees from the Babylon, when they returned to their homeland, when the Persian became the ruler, the Persian King Cyrus, when he became the ruler, he gave an edict that the returnees, the people can go to their homeland. And in those days, some groups of people, they returned to the Israel, and when they returned under different leadership, there were a lot of groups returning as time was going, and there were different groups and different leaders, and each leader done certain things in that community. So under Zerubbabel was the first returning came, and they built the temple. They came for building the temple, and it was the edict passed by the Persian king, and he gave the order to build the temple. And the second group came under Ezra after decades, after 81 years they came back. And during those days, Ezra, he built the community. He was the one who built the community, and also they wanted to keep the Then under the Nehemiah, they came the third returnee, and they built the wall of the Jerusalem. So this is how they built again their community when they came back from the Babylon. And the returnees, we have to understand that those who went to Babylon did not return. So only there were 2 to 3 million people who went to Babylon, who were taken as captive to the Babylon, but when they returned, when they were the edict was passed, only 50,000 people returned, because the others, they felt that it was safe to stay there and to live a peaceful life, because the journey was very tough for them, and the hardship, they found that to build the temple, it was more harder for them, so they did not return. So this is the summary of the Ezra and Nehemiah. And I would like to go to the 2.3, the restoration of the community, which is our main focus. So list of returnees. The modern reader usually skips or skims this chapter. Why was this long list of names included? Which value did it have for the first readers? What value does it have for us? Again, the author and his readers were concerned about the community of this community with the pre-exilic Jewish nation. It was important to show that this community, though small and weak, continued God's plan for Israel. They were his covenant people and thus inherited the promises concerning the future. For this, it was important that members of the community valued as individuals by God. Be sure of their genealogy. The author was concerned to preserve the purity of the Jewish community. So Ezra was very particular in the building of the community, because there were a lot of people other than the Jewish nation. So there were other Samaritans, the Elamites from the Persia, the Samaritans from Assyria, and the Israel, and also the other group of people who also returned with these returnees. So he was so particular to build his nation as God has promised. So that's why they are writing the list, and they wanted to check which their genealogy, and to connect them with their ancestor. So that's why the list has been written in the Ezra second chapter. This same list, with some variations, appears in Nehemiah 7, chapter 7, 6 to 73, and also in the apocryphal book, 1st Ezra 5, 4 to 46. Either one is a copy of the other, or both are copied from the same original. If the author already had the substance of the book before writing Ezra 1 to 6, so he must have taken this list from that composition. But that still does not tell us how the list originated or when. The list seems to be a composite of different lists. Some names are listed by ancestral families and others by geographical location. A number of factors point to a much earlier date than Nehemiah. Williamson, an Old Testament scholar, appears to be correct in his conclusion that most part of the list already existed by the time of the real work of building the temple began, and that it reflects more than one return. Perhaps groups of exiles returned at various times during the reign of Cyrus and Cambyses, his son. The Cyrus' son is the Cambyses. And so we have to know that they wanted to trace their ancestral and also the geographical location to which place they were connected, because they were for a long period, more than 50, or half decade, or half a century. So they were in 70 years in Babylon, and now they are returning. So they wanted to know whether they are the Jewish people or the other people who have been mixed with other groups of people. So what was the purpose of making the list, or the list from which it is derived? Several suggestions have been forwarded. According to Alt, an Old Testament scholar, the list was to legitimize land rights after the return from exile. Garling, another OT scholar, argued it was written to distinguish the true Israelites from the Samaritans, or to show on the occasion of Tattenai's request in Ezra 3 to 4. Those authorized by Cyrus to return to Judah and rebuild the temple. Brueggemann has written, the genealogies are a guarantee that Israel is not adrift in a vacuum of this present generation, but has security and credential. As long as Israel can names utter their precious sounds, It has a belonging place which no hostile empire can deny. So whatever the list purpose, these individuals were honored as being the first to return, showing their faith in the promises of God, and especially value they placed on the land God has promised to Abraham. In its present context, the list is more related to chapter 3 than to chapter 1. In fact, it prepares us for the great work of rebuilding the succeeding chapters. The list in Nehemiah 7 serves the opposite function of signalizing the conclusion of rebuilding temple, community, and the city. Therefore, from the summary of the post-exilic book Ezra Nehemiah, it is vivid that though the captives returned in several groups to their homeland, they were accepted only if they were able to recall or name their genealogy. This genealogy paved way to trace their tribe, clan, house, land, and office they have to work. With this hope, it will be very useful to know the genealogy and the importance it carries. So, because they are tracing the genealogy, we have to know why the genealogy is so important. Let us go through the point 3, genealogy. Since the dawn of civilization in Fertile Crescent is the place, the Babylon and this Mesopotamian area is called as Fertile Crescent. The humanity had anxiety with the family history. Is an age-old interest. Long before the writing of history on the walls of caves, on clay tablets, on all rolls of papers, a family's genealogy was remembered orally by a member of the family or tribe who passed along the genealogical account from one generation to another, to the next. The word genealogy is an old one. So genius means race and logos means like speaking or writing. It is the study of the origins, descendant, and relationships of family. Throughout the Middle East, in the ancient worlds of Egypt, Babylonia, Phoenicia, the Greek city-states, Rome, and also the early Hebrews, the Jews of the day of Jesus, there is one common continuing strand of interest and attachment to the genealogy in the religious and political life of the community, as well as in the intimacy of the family. Throughout history, the religion of each culture or social group, such as the Greeks, Egyptians, Romans, and Hebrews, included an explanation of how the world was created, how people came into being, and exactly what their relationship to their creator was. Actually, the genealogy was created, how they connected with the God. And the creation story, each country has their own creation story connecting themselves to God. And with this connection, they wanted to follow the genealogy, how they are connected. The family is connected to the God. So that is how they started. The human race, in return of this gift of life, owed respect to its creating spirits or gods, and each society developed rituals of worship in order to ensure the Creator's goodwill. If misfortune or disaster occurred, it was a sign that humans have insulted gods or were in some way out of favor and out of step with them. Irregularities and discrepancies in genealogies, while frequent, seem to have been neither surprising nor offensive to either the teller or the listener. The values of genealogies was not in the length but in their community over the centuries, not in the power of setting out a prolonged list of human parents and grandparents, but in the sense of relationship with a primitive ancestor. So it is a blending of the past with the present, blending of gods and the mortals. This was the main aim of them, how they connected themselves with their past ancestor, and also that connected to their gods. So genealogy in the Old Testament, how it is. So we find a lot of genealogies from the book of Genesis, Exodus, and even to the Mark in the New Testament, not Mark, Matthew, and Luke. So let us know why they have used that. We do not know when the tradition of recording genealogies became established in Israel, although we do know it is an ancient one. List of families and of citizens of official civils proposals must have been made very early, as suggested by the census of David noted in 2 Samuel 24:2. At several other points in the Bible, it is apparent the Israelites were familiar with such a list. At the time of the giving of Deuteronomic law, there must have been some set procedure of determining whether a person was pure Israeli descent. So like other Semitic peoples in the Near East, the Israelites traced the ancestry of their tribe, clan, and or individual back through the male line to a historical or mythical figure of the dim past. It was from that figure that they took their name. For example, the individuals of a group of people would be known as the sons of Israel, while the group would be known as the house of Israel. So membership in the tribe or clan meant that the individual was descended naturally or by adoption from a common ancestry. The member of a tribe or a clan was then able to point at Jacob, the father of all the tribes, as his great ancestor. Accordingly, the important role of genealogy in ancient Israel illustrates a society strongly based on a tribal and patriarchal tradition. The genealogies in the Old Testament seem to have been written during the period between the 6th and 4th century BCE, following the exile of the Hebrew in Egypt, and at about the time of Persian conquest of Israel. We find genealogies in several books of the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 1st, 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, and Nehemiah. Some have parallels in Babylon writings, such as Genesis chapter 5 and 4 and 5, which recount the birth of Cain and Abel, the murder of Abel, and the genealogy of Adam's son Seth, terminating with the note that Noah lived for 500 years and was the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Or other genealogies, such as those recorded in Genesis chapter 10 and 11, serves a different purpose. They recount a history of God's chosen people. The genealogies describe the important eras in Israel's history and the events and persons whom God acted from the creation to exile in Egypt to the building of the temple. As the story unwinds Genesis chapter 10 and 11, the genealogy of Noah's family, his son and his son's son, illustrates that it was no accident that God chose Israel as his people, and that a special unique relationship was thereby fashioned. After the exile in Egypt, genealogies became so important that significant figures such as Samuel, who previously had no recorded genealogy, was provided with a family tree. To preserve the ancient historical identity as well as the continuing links of the nation and of its faith, it was considered essential to maintain given line of ancestors for the nation's political and religious leaders. Genealogies list detailed individual family history, particularly those of families who played important historical roles, such as the house of David, the house of Saul, the house of Zadok. For Israel, it was important to maintain genealogies to indicate the people's distinctive relationship with God and to prevent the dilution of their religious belief and practices. One solution was to require that the priests and the political leaders be of pure Jewish blood. No one was permitted to become priest and enter the service of the temple unless he could present a perfect and authentic genealogical record of his priestly descent. During the period of the Second Temple, about 510 BCE, purity of descent played a vital role, especially for the priests and those Israelite families whose daughters were eligible to marry priests. Aside from the priestly class, ordinary genealogy were based on oral tradition. Following the destruction of the temple in 587 BCE, whereby the priestly class lost its physical center, the priests placed even more emphasis and value on the purity of the genealogical roots to ensure their continuing social prominence. After the return from exile in Babylon to Zion, other privileged groups besides the priests were interested in establishing and maintaining their social and economic position through genealogy. Such genealogies were essential to reclaim and preserve ancient family properties. These efforts were supported by the ancient genealogical list referred to in the opening chapters of Chronicles, including the genealogies of the patriarchs and the 12 sons of Israel. So, purpose of the genealogy, why they had this. Let us see, there are few purposes. In the ancient world, among Egyptian, Romans, and early Hebrews and Jewish in the age of Jesus, genealogy served several purposes: to understand the ancient world, its myths, legends, and heroes. To know the national histories and people histories, we need to grasp the use of genealogies. So first, One of the purpose of genealogies for every political or religious group was to identify the person by giving him or her name. Among the early Hebrews, names were assigned at birth and or at the circumcision on the 8th day in the case of Isaac. Second, in the ancient world, genealogy was used to indicate a blood relationship between individuals. Among the Hebrews, individuals were frequently more descriptively identified by adding son of to the given name, Joshua the son of Nun or the Levi the son of Alphaeus. Third, during the ages of David and Jesus, as well as today, genealogy was used to stress and advance family pride. Fourth, a genealogy also described what kind of person he or she was. For example, Julius Caesar, at his funeral of his aunt Julia, remarked the maternal ancestry of the aunt is traced to the kings, the paternal to the immortal gods. So fifth, genealogies gave the person certain privileges either by law or custom in his community or nation. So there were many laws given, particularly civil, religious, economic roles in the society were determined by the genealogy. Inheritance from the father to the eldest son was the base on which claims to kingship and high priesthood, the leadership of the clans and houses and property rights were established by descendants of the patriarchs in Canaan. To be a chief of the fathers of the priests and Levites was a distinguished honor. So for these things they used the genealogy. In post-exilic time, since 540 BCE, genealogy was recorded with special care to line up suitors to the high priesthood, to re-establish property rights which had lapsed during the owner's absence in Babylon, and to check the denationalizing process due to mixed marriages. It was for a lack of pure Jewish background that Edomites, Samaritans, and Galileans were viewed with a scornful eye by their Jewish contemporaries. Finally, a genealogy, either oral or written, might have the purpose of inspiring the descendant to pattern his or her life after a worthy ancestor. The accomplishment of earlier family members, clan leaders, military heroes, political or religious leaders were to stand as model for oneself and for one's children and for one's children's children. From the beginning of the recorded history, 5,000 years ago, people have been interested in the genealogy of their gods, kings, and priests. Through the decades and centuries of early civilization, humanity orally passed from one generation to the next for the explanation of the roots of gods, kings, and priests. The genealogical accounts not only describe the origins of certain groups and family lines, but also their relationship with one another. The genealogies may often be complicated and inconsistent within themselves and in contradiction to their purpose. This desire and design to record the purity of a family's descent as well as its continuity gave rise to creative embellishment of the genealogical account. It is against this background, the Near Eastern interest in genealogy, that we turn our attention to exploring the roots of women in the list of returnees from the Babylon to Judah. So there were a lot of reasons why they recorded this genealogy. The list of women declined in status. So these are the women we see in the Ezra and Nehemiah, book of Ezra and Nehemiah. Those have been declined from their status and it has been hidden. Their names are there, but their status is hidden. Let us now look at some women who are declined or hidden in Ezra and Nehemiah. We turn first to the list of returnees in Ezra 2 and its parallel in Nehemiah 7. The returnees are listed according to ancestors' names, place of origin, or occasionally occupation. The name of family heads are generally masculine. One group in particular is of special interest. Is Ezra chapter 2, 55, verse 55 mentions the descents of Hasso-Peret. So that is the female scribe. So we turn first to the list of returnees in Ezra 2 and its parallel in Nehemiah 7. The returnees are listed according to ancestors' name, place, origin. Again, I'm repeating. Descendants of the Hasso-Peret. The word literally means the female scribe. Translators or commenters, however, tend to say that this name denotes either a profession that had become a proper name, or the guild or office or scribes. Ezra and Nehemiah could not refer to a female scribe because such guild were not likely to have existed in ancient Judah. The presence of female scribes in the ancient Near East has been documented. The Jewish medieval commentators who appear in Mikra at Gedolet for Ezra and Nehemiah as Abraham ibn Ezra proposes that the term could be translated as female scribes. So he writes concerning this Hasoperet, it is possible that this title is this is a title for a woman or a female worker clearly named after the matriarch's family. So after this, according to Ezra chapter 261, let us see Barzillai clan. It is a clan. So Barzillai, according to Ezra 261 and Ezra's 538, the Barzillai clan is named after the wife's family because the man has taken her name. A man named Barzillai helped David when he fled from Absalom. It is interesting that the priest who married her daughter took his name. Some have suggested he took the family, that family name, so he could inherit property. The fact that priests did not inherit land may have meant his exclusion from priestly work. Thus we read the descendants of Barzillai such appropriating of a wife's family name, which most likely indicates that the person also received a share of wife's inheritance, is rarely attested in the Bible. So among the contributors of temple, we find female singers. So we also see female singers. It is interesting to note another reference to women in the list, having stated that 42,360 people had returned. The list mentions that there were male and female servants and male and female singers. The quantity of singers, servants, singers, horses and donkeys tells us something about the economic condition of the people. So many men servant and maid servant indicate wealthy people in that group. Also, the wealthy utilized horses, whereas poorer people used donkeys. As we would expect that there were many donkeys than horses. Some years later, when the prophet Haggai prophesied in 520 BC, the economic situation has worsened considerably. The community was suffering from poverty. It is tempting to link the female singers with the temple cult, but their place in the list is given between servants and animals. So suggests that they more likely held a position entertainers without much status. From the returnees of the Ezra in 8:1, emphasis is made on the family heads who have the great responsibility of being head of the family. The family is the basis of society and the father is the head of the family. As such, he has tremendous responsibility under God to direct and teach his family. Ezra carefully registers each family. Here we see Shelomith. Another interesting name appears is, according to Ezra 8:10, the descendants of Shelomith go up with Ezra, like some other post-exilic name. Shelomith can be masculine or feminine. The Greek version of Ezra add a name Bani here, rendering the sentence in a way that excludes reading Shelomith as a woman's name. The Hebrew text, however, leaves the sex of the person unspecified. According to 1 Chronicles 3:19, Shelomith is the daughter of Zerubbabel, the last known descendant of David to possess a political power. A seal bearing in inscription to Shelomith, the maidservant of Elnath, was discovered in 1975. E. Mayers identifies the seal with Shelomith, daughter of Zerubbabel, and argues that the seal offers a significant postscript to the fate of the Davidic house. He suggests that Elnath, a governor of Judah, may have attached himself to the Davidic line by marrying Shelomith. Instead, translation and commentaries typically erase Shelomith's presence by revocalizing the name and following the Septuagint. The reason for choosing the Septuagint for Ezra 8:10 go back to the Martin North, who considers Shelomith a man's name and a corruption of Shelomith. The implicit rationale is clear. A clan's head is masculine, but this biblical text has a woman's name. It must be a mistake. Hence, the name must have been changed. Some scholars suggest altering Shelomith to Shelomoth. Since Shelomoth is a feminine name, Shelomith is a feminine name, however, it can be also a man's name. Shalom, the fifth one is Shalom, was as Raphael in verse 9 was ruler of part of countryside around Jerusalem. Some understand daughters as small towns and translate he and men from small towns. Shalom daughters. Another interesting reference to women occurs in a list of those who built Jerusalem's wall. In Nehemiah 3:12 we read, next to him Shalom repaired he and his daughters. The translations and commentaries are at times amusing, often irritating. The Jerusalem Bible rewrites the text saying that the building was done by Shalom, by him and his sons. Baton is particularly amusing. Suddenly the men of he and his daughters are unknown. It is most exciting that confusion rose solely by a refusal to recognize the role of women in the building of the city walls. Williamson and Brockington resist a reference to women. They conclude on the basis of Numbers 36:8 that if Shalom had no sons, it would be natural for the daughters to help on an occasion like this, since they would inherit his name and property. On the basis of Elephantine documents, we may add that daughters could inherit even when there were sons. The lists that have been examined thus far are among the most important ones in Ezra and Nehemiah, referring to the key events, to the return from exile and the building of the city's walls. If the reading are correct, then women makes an appearance in each of these events. These appearances are significant. Obviously, they do not establish gender balance, but they nevertheless reflect women's presence in the symbolic and practical ways. So, next one is Nehemiah's enemies would not give up, but kept trying different strategies. Some people within the Jewish community were not in favor of the building project, so Sanballat and Tobiah tried to use them against Nehemiah's leadership. And we see prophetess Noadiah, women have other roles in Ezra and Nehemiah. The prophets Noadiah is an example. She appears as an opponent of Nehemiah. Since Nehemiah attacks many leaders who disagrees with his policies, little can be concluded about Noadiah's message. All we can determine is her prominence. After a confrontation with another prophet, Nehemiah calls for vengeance. So remember Tobiah and Sanballat, according to the things that they did, also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid, in the Nehemiah 6:14. We have no further information about Noadiah. The other named opponents are well known. Tobiah was an Ammonite official who has hampered Nehemiah all along, and Sanballat was the governor of the Samaria. The mention of this otherwise mysterious prophetess together with them suggests that her status may be comparable and that she, like them, was a prominent person. The reference to Noadiah, the prophetess, further indicates that the prophetic office was open to women in the post-exilic period. Thus, he again prayed that God remember Tobiah and Sanballat and the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who were opposed to the leadership and opposed God's work. Vengeance was left to God. So, and the next one is Ezra. We see the women in the public reading of Torah. So the last attention is to women's presence at the climax of the restoration, namely at the public reading of the Torah. So last generation considered this gathering as a second giving Torah analogs to Sinai event. Kohel refers not to the mere collective of people, but to a congregation constituted for official holy purposes. But there are doubts about the role and presence of women at Sinai. Given the androcentric message, do not go near a woman in Exodus 19:15, which implies that only men were addressed. So no such doubt belongs to this event. Here, women's presence is explicitly and emphatically recognized and indicating religious egalitarianism at least on this level of participation. From the presentation, it is understood that Jewish women in the post-exilic era have been effaced from history. Their importance is not attested in existing literature. Some of their names and also some evidences about their significance have not been preserved. Evaluation and conclusion. To conclude, the purpose was to bring biblical women of the post-exilic era out from the declined status to give them inclined status to which they belong. Because we do not have enough of biblical literary texts to prove the position of women, Jewish women in post-exilic era, still women's position or status they have that they inherited cannot be destroyed from history. The presentation have been the intention to make not only the post-exilic women then, but also to make visible the women now, those who are not recognized of their importance and potential, etc., and who are being exploited by various issues, brutally killed to death, which they don't inherit. The so-called patriarchy is in the form of religion, political, education, family, in all authorities. Therefore, the world must recognize and stop declining the women from their status and must realize that women can help us to reconstruct the world and enhance our understanding of the roots of our culture and religious traditions that finally connect us to God, to the God genealogically. Thank you.
Thank you, dear ma'am. Shall we all appreciate dear ma'am for her presentation. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to invite the student respondent, Brother Tamil Vendan, to respond.
Good afternoon, friends and faculties who have gathered here for this faculty research seminar. It is my privilege to be a student respondent of this paper. Hereby, I acknowledge the hard work of the presenter throughout this research paper. That is, the status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period. At first, I would like to give the gist of this paper. In this paper, the presenter dealt about the position of women in Israel by bringing the claim of Gary Beckman, through which one could get status of the women in Israel who was considered less in power and who were not give much importance in the social, religious and economic status, and which made men to be powerful. Further, the presenter traced the witness in the post-exilic period where the women was in declined status by pointing out the summary of the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, in which we could know about the restoration of the temple, the reformation of the people. Later, the presenter has dealt about the restoration of the community, list of returnees, which adds some essence in relation to the topic. However, the presenter does not neglect the genealogy which being present in the book of Nehemiah and Ezra, and has brought the aspect of genealogy in the Old Testament, where one finds the genealogies in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra and Nehemiah. Along with that, the presenter has also dealt with the purpose of genealogy, which gives out the essence of genealogy, which was recorded in special care to line up suitors to the high priesthood, to re-establish property rights which had lapsed during the owner's absence in Babylon, and to check the denationalizing process due to the mixed marriages in post-exilic time since 540 BCE. At last, the presenter tries to expose the list of women declined in status throughout the female scribes, Barzillai, female singers, Shilomith, Shalom daughters, prophetess, Novodia. Presence of women at public readings of Torah. All these topics which has been brought in this paper makes the paper more clear and made evident the status of women and how the women were being treated or considered in the post-exilic time of Israel. Passing on the response of this paper, I would like to clarify with the presenter about the followings. Throughout the Old Testament time, it is evident that the woman doesn't have the equal status comparing to men. But there were also the women whom Yahweh had used them as Yahweh's messenger, like Deborah, Miriam, Ruth, etc. But comparing to the men, the women were not in equal number. This was the act of Yahweh. Yahweh has selected and anointed many men compared to women. The question I had here is whether Yahweh is a male chauvinistic or the one who supports men. And it seems that it was not men who made the women to be submissive to men in the case of Miriam, Esther, and Eve. Then how can you say that women were in low status only by the event of Ezra and Nehemiah? Are you claiming that it is the blunder made by Yahweh? That's all my question, and I thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Thamilvendan, for your response. Thank you. So I think I have to respond, and I also would like to hold the podium, because without holding the podium, I would not get words sometimes. So sometimes this is a problem of pastors and politicians also. Without holding mic or podium, we don't get words, right? So sometimes it happens. Okay, I'd like to thank our dear ma'am for her fruitful presentation this pleasant day. Thank you so much on the status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period. So I understand that this concentrates especially on the women in post-exilic period. So let me read. I think you can find my response over there. I read my response. Maybe I have jotted down here and there. Yeah. While we think of the status of women, especially in our nation, on the one hand, there is a drastic improvement down the very recent decades, but on the other, a stigma remains irrevocable in certain parts of our nation where women face societal restrictions in many aspects. The title of this paper and the opening statement by the presenter give us a hope that traces of women's contribution to the society during the post-exilic period would be brought to the floor, which in turn would give an added scriptural counsel for the emancipation of women in this present age. However, the presenter seems to have turned to the usual approach of female chauvinism, blaming men, which perhaps the reality of the biblical era at large. You know, when the introduction was there, the first line was very much impressive, but when I began to read the second line, I was really hurt in one way or another, because it projected a female chauvinistic attitude blaming men, but we need to understand that it was the reality of the biblical era at large. The presenter has made appreciable efforts in bringing to light the women who are shadowed in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah by including supportive arguments from some of the renowned feminists, and moreover by adopting critical tools helpful for the study, that is to bring biblical women of the post-exilic era out from the shadows and expose the dominant role of male scribes who had been unjust to the women, declining their status. Moreover, the presenter, using biblical and non-biblical literary text, has attempted analyzing the social position of women. The presenter opines that the literary text reveal information on women in the highest strata of the society, and not much on the position of women in the lower strata of the society. She has sought to understand the position of goddesses in relation to gods projected in mythical stories, which she at first perceives as a magnified reflection of the human world. However, the presenter, after a careful study, concludes that it would be simplistic to assume the position of goddesses in myths reflected the actual position of women in that society. Also, according to me, the presenter seems to have mixed opinions on this and could not come to a fixed opinion. Now, when I read about especially about how the presenter has related the goddesses and myths with women in the society, I assume that the presenter seems to have some mixed opinions on this and could not come to a fixed opinion. In order to understand the declined state of the women, the presenter renders a summary of the post-exilic books like Ezra and Nehemiah, and has done a careful study on the genealogical accounts found in the Old Testament, attempting to find possible traces on a remarkable status of women, which seems to have, in a way, vexed the presenter. Of course, I understand that the presenter has made a careful study on the genealogical accounts, assuming that she would find some possible traces of remarkable contribution of women during post-exilic era, but I understand that even the presenter also is vexed in a way that she could not find any women over there in higher strata in the society. Also, the presenter has clearly stated the purposes of the genealogical accounts, which were the pride of our ancestors, and even for the present generation in certain places still. So each and every writer gives the genealogical account for their own purpose. Even if you take New Testament, Matthew and Luke, they have the genealogical account of Jesus Christ, and they have their own purpose. So Matthew traces the genealogy of Jesus back to Abraham, and Luke traces back the genealogy of Jesus to Adam. So they have their own reasons, and the reasons or the purposes of genealogy could be, or the genealogical list could be very much dealt with over here from page number 5, that the presenter has said the list was to legitimize land rights after the return from exile, to distinguish the true Israelites from the Samaritans, and even it becomes a guarantee for Israel, security and credentials, and it paved way to trace their tribe, clan, house, land, and office they have to work, and it also served official civil purposes, and it also helped them to recount a history of God-chosen people, helped in nations political and religious, help for nations political and religious leaders. And it was important to maintain genealogies to indicate the people's distinctive relationship with God and to prevent the dilution of their religious beliefs and practices. So I understand that it was also important to maintain genealogies to indicate the people's distinctive relationship with God also. So some of the pros and cons, pros, the presenter's efforts in digging into the possible traces of remarkable status of women is appreciable. The presenter has helped the community to be aware of certain traces of women, which include the presence of female scribes, female singers, Shalom daughters, prophetess, and the like, in the minute details of genealogical accounts, which is usual for any reader to bypass. Usually, we don't read those genealogical accounts, but her careful efforts have brought forth the women singers, women scribes, Shalom daughters, prophetess, and it is very much useful for us. The presenter's contribution on the purpose of the genealogical accounts is highly informative and very much apt to the discussion. The purpose of the genealogical accounts, which I have already told. Some of the cons. The presenter seems to have mixed opinions, especially on relating the role of goddess to that of women. Certain repeated explanations on the genealogical accounts are felt repetitive. I think that should have been avoided. Contextual relevance of the presentation seems to have been denied of its space in this presentation, just as the post-exilic women were denied of their space in the society. Of course, the paper highlights that space was not given to women during the post-exilic age, and here in this paper I understand that space is not given for contextual relevance of this presentation. I think the presenter would do that in her response. I would say that the last statement rendered by the presenter, last statement, therefore the world must recognize and stop declining the women from their status. That statement, according to me, seems to be an age-old, outdated one, because it starts like this: therefore the world must recognize. Now it is like generalizing. So down the ages we are using the statement, the world must recognize, the world should change on its attitude toward women. Down the decades we are talking about it, but I think there are changes, and it is better that we can say, therefore, certain men of the world, or certain communities, or certain regions of the world must recognize. Because personally, I am hurt by this statement, because I have a good place for women, of course. So I think it is better to avoid a generalizing statement. Therefore, the world must recognize. So on the whole, the final verdict would be, I should say that through this presentation, on this pleasant day, the presenter, dear ma'am, has been a great blessing for us, and we could evidently feel that this presentation was a fruitful one, provided that some contextual relevances being added, at least during the response of the presenter, because we have fresh but bitter happenings on our nation. So I think that could be related. So I thank again dear ma'am for her fruitful presentation. Thank you so much. Now the floor is open for your response. Maybe at first we can listen to the response from the students, maybe questions or any clarifications or your appreciations on the paper. At first to the students, then I think then to the faculty. Yeah. Both, okay. So both can respond, students and faculty as well, simultaneously. Can anyone initiate, or do we have a practice of inviting anyone to respond? I think at least the final years should initiate. Yeah, a dear principal is coming to respond.
Thank you, Mrs. Sandhi, for your hard work and bringing a paper in this format. Now, I wanted to appreciate to bring a lot of historical information about the position of women in Israel, particularly genealogies and reformation of the people, restoration of the community. Very good. All the informations are very valuable, and it is needed for the present scenario, as well as as the theological community. It is very useful for us to learn the things which are displayed in the paper. Some clarifications I expected from the paper. The first page, position of women in Israel, last line, non-biblical literary texts. There needs some clarification, I think, which are the non-biblical literary texts. Literary texts, sometimes it may be written sources like scroll or wall paintings or whatever it may be. Okay, so there needs some clarification, at least within bracket. We have to give some clarification. And again, here in second page, you are talking about the myths. For instance, render information on the position of goddesses in the relation to the gods. Actually, is it biblical, gods and goddesses? Bible talks about the gods and goddesses. Now we can see the God's character as even a motherly character of God is portrayed in the Bible. But I don't know, is there any goddesses in relation to gods? Then, okay, another thing also it is written, but you have later explained everything. And moreover, in genealogy also, before genealogy, actually, if you, according to the methodology, when you talk about one incident or one historical content, finally you have to give some relevance. Okay, when you talk about the Nehemiah, under the leadership of Zerubbabel, they reconstructed the walls of Jerusalem, as well as they reconstructed the Jerusalem temple, renovated the Jerusalem temple. Yes, of course. Now, what was the role of women there? What was the role of women there? Finally, you have brought in, but in the place itself, what is missing? What is the problem? Okay, what is the problem of here in this with this content? Said detail about the story found in Nehemiah and Ezra, the book of Nehemiah and Ezra. So there, what was the problem? You have explained later that the role of women. They made them to stand family-wise. Family means including women. Then Shallum's daughter was involved in renovation work, and even women played a vital role in reconstructing the temple. But later you explained. But when you concluded, therefore, the summary of post-exilic book, Ezra and Nehemiah, there, what is your problem? You have to mention there. Okay. Then genealogy in the Old Testament, there also some materials are cut and pasted that we can understand by the writing itself. Okay, but you have, of course, it is legal since you have given in the footnotes. It is legally no problem, not considered as the plagiarism, but the quotation marks. Okay, by the quotation mark itself, you can understand that it is cut and pasted. Okay, whereas other places you have, we can understand that it is typed. The quotation marks, you have to be careful. Then these are some of the things I wanted to say here. And also in the evaluation and conclusion, we need a little more relevance, the contemporary relevance, how you are relating these issues with the contemporary scenario, contemporary Indian context. That is much needed. Contemporary Indian context is much needed. And now, the present, according to present context, we are scared of matriarchy. You are talking about patriarchy, but we are scared of matriarchy. It is not only my word, but some of the scholars have started speaking. Even the Senate, the principal's board meeting, when, I don't want to mention the principal's name, he openly told that, okay, came out and told that we are scared of another matriarchy now. Okay. Because once upon a time, we fought for, as a male, menfold, we fought for the women's rights, feminism. Okay, but now we are scared. We are scared. We are under threat of matriarchy. So no matriarchy, no patriarchy. All are equal. That is needed. Okay, so that's all. I congratulate Mrs. Shanti for her future contributions, and also I appreciate her effort. Thank you. Thank you for.
Reverend Charles, sir. Thank you, Santini ma'am, for your paper. I congratulate you for presenting this paper, and I hope this paper could be able to understand for each of us. There are few comments, not taking much time. I want to come directly to the things which we need to be more clear with that. First of all, in the topic itself, the status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period. Here, the status, I have a problem with this, the status itself reflects the negative aspects of the woman. So you are projecting, you are talking about the woman, and you are, of course, I hope you are fighting for the woman's liberation through this paper. So when you are fighting or supporting for this status or the role or the woman in the society, so at least you could positively you can bring the topic itself. So here you can use the role or the position of the woman in the Old Testament like that. Then coming to the here in page number 11. Among the contribution for the temple, we find female singers. You are talking about the contribution of women in the temples. Of course, the role of the woman played a vital during this period.
During this period, no powerful kingship was existed, I believe. But the prophetic role was considered as high. The prophet's role was elevated in status along with the priestly and the scribe, that we can see in Nehemiah chapter 6 verse 14, as you have said, remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did, and also to the prophetess Nohadiah. Here, that means God used women as prophets. So their role was superior. That is, their role was powerful role. But how they utilize their role, that is the question today. How they utilize the role. The position or the role has been given to the woman by God. She was anointed as a prophet, but she was against Nehemiah. That only we can see here. The prophet who wanted to make me afraid. In one place he was saying that Tobiah and Sanballat, they are high officials, but here this prophetess, she was comparable. Her status may be comparable, that she liked them as a prominent person. It's not matter where she is a prominent person or comparable, but she was anointed as a prophet. So what is her role? How she utilized such anointment? She was against such things. So one more thing is that when in the conclusion part, when we are talking about these things, you have told all the histories, but at least you could bring some issues. What are the issues is existing? Even in the church, and now the same situation is exist. Like in the choir or in singing, the female and male, they both are utilized, and they both are called to be take part. But what is the present situation of the woman in the church and in the society? If you could bring some issues, that could be much better. Then you can argue with such issues, and you can say that it is a male chauvinistic situation. So that could be more benefit and useful for us, I think. Thank you, ma'am.
Reverend Daniel, sir, yeah.
Thank you, Shanti ma'am, for the paper. So the presenter tried to bring out the hidden history of women during the time of post-exilic period of Israelites. So as Charles Anand said, the status of women in the Old Testament during the post-exilic period, I do not have any problem with the status, the word status. But the problem is, as it is clearly mentioned in the introduction part itself, the religion Christianity, the religion Judaism, and Israelite nation, all these three are male-dominated community. There is no doubt in that. So Jewish people are patriarchal people. So usually my teacher, Reverend Jerin sir, he taught me, when I studied here in the BTS, he taught me one prayer. Usually the Jewish people used to pray. In the morning, a Jewish man used to pray, thank God for not creating me as a dog. Thank God for not creating me as a pig. Thank God for not creating me as a woman. So it's very clear that whether the Israelites or Jewish people or Christianity, in all these three communities, we find male domination. So in that arena, in that arena, how can we talk about the empowerment of women? Even throughout your paper, you talk about the status of women during the post-exilic period, even that too declining the status of women, not empowering the status of women. That is the one thing. And the second thing, just can you give one statement about what is the message of the paper? Message of the paper. As a reader, I just want to know what is the message of the paper. Who are your audience? Whether the church or the society. And the third one, what is the methodology that you applied in the paper? In the beginning, in the introduction part, you mentioned about biblical criticism, higher criticism, and historical cultural criticism. Which methodology is applied in the paper? So that seems to be not clear. As well as usually when we have the paper from the Old Testament or from the New Testament department, they used to take one particular text. From that text, they used to do the either textual criticism or biblical criticism. But here in the paper, you have taken the book of Nehemiah and Ezra, which consists more than 20 chapters. So upon which passage your research is based, from which passage you try to bring out a message to your readers. So that is the another thing. And in page number 3, summary of the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. So here you just gave some introduction about the book of Ezra. What about the Nehemiah? Nehemiah is not there. So restoration and reformation of the people from the book of Ezra, but from Nehemiah nowhere you mention anything about the condition of Israelite during the time of Nehemiah. That is the another thing. And overall, just as a pastor or just as a Christian, I just want to ask you a question that today we found the status of women is empowered in our country. One way or another way, still the women are facing the problem. Every day they are facing the problem. From childhood till the death, women are facing the problem. So as a presenter, what you would like to say to the society and to the church in relation to the problems of the women? So all the research paper used to concentrate on particular issue, but in the paper, theory is that, but the practical part of the paper is completely missing in the paper. Research means already something is there, so we are again doing the research. So research from Old Testament department, you are researching a particular problem from a particular biblical text from the Old Testament. That should be the line of the paper. But it seems that theory part is clear, but the practical part is completely missing in the paper. So overall, thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us towards the empowerment of women. Of course, the paper doesn't talk much about the empowerment of women. Still, we fight for the empowerment of women, and you are the role model for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more reflection on the paper? So I thank our dear principal, Reverend Charles sir, Reverend Daniel sir, for their response. Any more response from the faculty side or from the students? Yeah, I think at least one from the women's side. Yeah, we have Sneha. So following that, we have, who is coming? Another one.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, ma'am. As you have presented your paper, which related to women's, is more appreciable. So I just want to quote 2 questions regarding this paper. Since many biblical text comes from higher social classes and there are lack of sources about the status of lower class women. So how does this affect the conclusion about women's roles in biblical text? And the next question I want to say is, as this paper ends by calling for recognizing and improving women's status today using historical examples, how these historical examples help inform current discussion on gender equality in religious and cultural context? I hope you understood the question. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any more response from the student side? No, I think we can move to any more? Final call? No? So I think we can move to the response by our dear ma'am.
Thank you for your contributions, and thank you that all have listened well. So this shows that the interest in responding is encouraging me. Starting from Tamil Vendan, I think I can go. So thank you for your appreciation, and all of you have appreciated me. So thank you for that. And now I want to, so as we run out of time, I hope you will all stay here, no? Okay. So here, Tamil Vendan has given a printed thing. Let me read that. Throughout the Old Testament time, it's evident that women doesn't have equal status comparing to men, but there are also women whom Yahweh had used them as Yahweh's messenger, like Deborah, Miriam, Ruth. But comparing to men, the women were not in equal number. This was the act of Yahweh. Yahweh has selected and anointed men and many men compared to women. The question I had here is whether Yahweh is male chauvinist or the one who supports men. So here I'll read all his questions. And it seems that it was not men who made the women to submissive to men. In case of Miriam and Esther and Eve. Then how can you say that women were in low status? So his point is like whether God has made the women. Is that right? So Yahweh, whether you think Yahweh has put the women in low status, I feel like that. Actually, I wanted to clarify that why the women's status has went low in the ancient Near Eastern countries. That is connected with the mythology, myths, especially with myths, because the Jewish nation has come from the Mesopotamia, where Mesopotamians have a lot of myths. And those myths are connected with the gods, and how the men or the creation is connected with the gods. So you know the Babylonian stories of creation where the god, he cuts his body, the Tiamat and the son, the husband, El, and there are a lot of gods named. So the Canaanite gods also we have, El is the supreme god, and Yahweh is the son of El, and Yahweh's wife is Ashtaroth, you find in the Bible. So there are female gods and goddesses even in our Bible. So it is all, you cannot read, when you read you will not find it as it is. So here I have my problem is the status of women has been put by the men, not by God. So here God, you should not think that you are a Bible theological student, you know that how the Bible came into. So how the formation of the Bible. It is not God who dictated and men wrote. It was just formation, it has formed. So in the formation, the men did not give equal importance to the women. That is the thing. The recorded women are of high status, and the men has put them down because it has been, you connect the men and the women to the myths of those area. Okay. Even in our country, we have our own creation story where we connect the human to the God, and we say that women are always under men. No, it is that. So even in Hindu Vedas, we find that it is the women is considered as a object, a sexual object, whether she's a mother or sister or daughter or anyone, she is considered like that. That is what the Vedam of Hindus teach. So here, that even we, one statement I want to say, like the MGR song, no? Naattukku Rani irundalo, veetukku Manavi. So that is how we put the women. See, now I found, I want to say one reels I saw from an old woman. She was saying she was giving advice to the younger generation, saying that, please, husband and wife, you give, help your wife when she's at home, when she's doing the household jobs. Because in those days, we did not go for job, we were at home and we did all the work. But now the women are going for job, and after coming, they have to do all the household jobs. So equally, you have to give, you have to help her. This is that is the equal status where you start. So here I want to say that my problem is that men did not give the status or the position, okay, for the women. That is the main concern, and I want to bring. And here, a lot of questions raised by others also. I want to, so I hope you understood. So it is not the Yahweh. Yahweh did not put the, he is not male chauvinist, only the men who has recorded, the scribes who has written the Bible. And a mixed opinion, sirs, I want to say that there is a mixed opinion and that in the context, like the goddess to the women. So as the goddess, so they connect, the men, human connected their life to the goddess. When the goddess was not given the honor in their, in that Mesopotamian area or the countries there, and slowly that was reflected in the house or in the family. They did not give the women the power. When you see in the, a good example who gave the women was given power